Recording. Hi, everybody. It's Kimberly King here. I have on my Zoom today Julie Federico. She is an author and an expert in the field of sexual abuse prevention. And we are just starting to set up a couple of really great resources for parents that are going to include some safety chats and hopefully a podcast coming soon. And so Julie is here today to just introduce herself and chat with us about what parents need to know and maybe what parents are missing from the start. So Julie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit and take it from there.
Kimberly, thanks for having me on today. I am a child abuse expert. I have the technical skills of a moth, and that's why you're not seeing my face right now.
Okay.
I have run in child abuse circles pretty much since I started working in the field when I was around 23 years old. And now, 30 years later, I have a lot of information, but I know a lot of people out there left high school, went to college, got a degree in business, accounting, construction, or maybe they own their own business or they're a realtor. So I'm talking today to people who have never hung out in these child abuse prevention circles very much, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally, because they need the information too.
They do. And so I'm going to back up my dial it back, as they say, and I'm not going to talk in acronyms and I'm not going to talk like you know anything. I'm going to give you just a few tips. This is your introduction to body safety 101. And
Perfect.
I'm going to make this kind of on an elementary level, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like pretend that we know absolutely nothing. So for somebody who's not even thought about the topic, that's what we're talking about today.
Right. So you've just brought this bundle of joy home from the hospital, and it is amazing. And you have just seen the miracle of birth, which is amazing, and you haven't slept in 3 days. I know that you're not thinking about body safety if you have a 1-week-old infant, and you've got some time. 1-week-old infants are always with their parents, so you can take a break. If you have a new infant, you can turn me off and turn this back on in 6 months, because you probably need to sleep more than listen to me. When children come home from the hospital, they have this like pristine condition to them. Nothing has happened to them yet. Nothing bad has happened. So I'm really talking, I would say about 6 months and older. The
Right.
first thing I see that parents do wrong, and I'll just say wrong because I think it's wrong, is grandma and grandpa come to see the baby for the first time. This baby doesn't know them and they want to hug the baby, and the kid will start crying sometimes, or when they're older, they'll say, I don't want to hug grandma. When they're around 2, they'll say that. But a 6-month-old might start fussing, and you can tell they really don't want to be in the arms of this stranger, but yet you let it happen because grandma hasn't seen the baby yet. And this is maybe a first grandchild.
Right.
So just back up a minute and think about what that experience is like for your child, not for you, not for grandma, for the baby.
So how do you solve that problem without hurting grandma's feelings, you think?
Right. Well, you can blame it on me. You say, I went to this talk show host by Julie Federico. She was such an idiot. She couldn't get her camera on, but I only have her name. And she says, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do it. And if you want me to email you a language, I can, to have dialogue with grandma. Grandma will get over it. Yeah. But why I talk about this, because it's the first like body safety experiment you have with your kid. The kid is trusting in his instinct. It's crying. It's pushing back, say. Right. And you're saying, no, do this. That's your first thing that you're doing to get kids to go against their instincts, if that makes sense.
So babies have instincts, even when they're 6 months old. They can perceive moods and energy, and they can express their wants with their crying.
Correct. Okay. And if you make them go to grandma, you're desensitizing them to that innate God-given instinct. People are born with an enormous self-protection skill. You didn't ask for it. You didn't have to sign up for it. There was no form to download at birth. You were just born with this skill to protect yourself. And I believe that comes from God. If you don't believe in God, it can come from another higher being. It can come from a female. It can come from wherever you want. It is out there, whatever you want to label, it is. Right. Kids have these instincts, and parents will sometimes desensitize kids to this. The Twitter version of what you say to grandma is we're raising our children to be aware of their own needs and to be aware of body safety, period. Grandma may ask you later in the day, what the hell is body safety? That is some weird millennial word that you guys have created. And that's another conversation. So that's a second conversation. That's all you have to say to grandma. And grandma will probably get it. She will get it. And then you just kind of move on. In about an hour, 2 hours, maybe the next day, that baby will warm up to grandma, and that baby will be climbing into her lap or wanting to go to her. So this is temporary.
Right. So it's good to not force anything with a baby who is protesting, for sure. I 100% agree with that. And then just as the baby gets more accustomed to the grandma's, energy, to the smells, everything is sensory when children are under 1 year old, right? So they're, overwhelmed by their senses and they're just trying to take it all in and make adjustments. So that makes a whole lot of sense.
And I know the babies love grandmas. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a happy baby who's probably falling asleep in the arms of grandma, and you're respecting their boundaries. And there's nothing better that you can do to that. And I have to back up and say everything that I'm saying may be completely foreign to you, foreign in the way that you may not know 6 months olds have this internal mechanism. If you've never been around kids before, you may not know that babies have this because you think, oh, it's a baby. It doesn't have feelings yet.
Right.
I don't have hard data. I can't cite sources that tell you this is true. If you hang out with kids enough, you'll learn that it's true. But if this is your first baby, you're just going to kind of have to trust me on this one because that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I agree. And so that kind of, I think, carries through to the whole concept of diaper changing and potty training, right? So when we have 6-month-old babies, we're obviously changing diapers and wiping. So do you have any tips for new parents on like how to respect those boundaries, but also, obviously we have to keep babies clean. So what do you recommend? Narrating how you're wiping or like talking about it while you're doing it? What seems to make sense to you for new parents?
I know that you talked about you doing this with your son last time. I have to say, I was just all about business. I never talked. I just changed their diaper and went on. I think you, as a parent, you can do whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to talk about, I'm changing your diaper now, no one else should be touching you here but me. If you want to put that little plug in to your 2-year-olds, they'll get that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And the natural thing about changing a diaper is you don't have to introduce the topic. It's already there. So you don't have to start this conversation. You say to your child, I'm changing your diaper, but no one else should be touching you here.
Right.
And they may say, by the way, someone already has, but I think most kids will understand that, and that will teach them, and that will kind of internalize what they already know. I think they already know that no one else should be doing that. They just know that automatically, but you are reinforcing that. And that's important. It's like important with the grandma. You were reinforcing their body safetyness. So now you've done 2 things.
Right. So and you're respecting in the beginning, and then it just keeps on growing with the child, which is how I think you build a layer of, body skill safety, and then they take it with them, which is what we want. Right.
What I always say to parents is you want to be the first one to talk to your kids about this, not the perpetrator. Because they're not going to be giving the message that you want sent. And I don't even know you, but I know that to be 100% true.
Absolutely.
You want to be the first one to have a corner on this market. So if you start with a 6-month-old, a 2-year-old, chances are no one has done anything to a 2-year-old because they've been under your care. Child abuse is all about access. Most parents don't give their 6-month-old a lot of people access to that baby. They are pretty much on your lap the entire day or in their crib.
Unless they're at daycare, which is something, or nannies or babysitters. So for the parents that are not, I was lucky enough to be an at-home mom and was with my kids from 0 to 2 for all 3 of them.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of parents don't have that luxury. So
and this is my tip. Yeah. If you're taking a 6-week-old to a daycare, which I completely know that happens, you buy my book, you take it to the daycare with you, you give it to the daycare lady and you say, I've trained my child in body safety from Julie Federico's book. you hand them the book. That
Perfect.
babysitter is going to be like, oh, this kid is quote unquote protected.
Yeah.
And I
So,
wish I could stop right now and say, does anyone have any questions about that? And people may say, I would never do that. It seems presumptuous. I'm trying to think of what pushback
yeah.
people might think of that.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the same preventative measures as like washing your hands. You know, you wash your hands so you don't get germs, so you don't get sick, right? So if you're going to have a daycare center or a babysitter who's going to be following safety procedures, then they should know about these prevention techniques, and they should know that you're teaching them to your children even at a very young age, and they should know that it's on your radar, right? Because a 6-month baby is not going to be able to report, you know, if something has happened to them at daycare. But if you're an informed and empowered and educated mom and dad, you might pick up the signs if you're really checked into the topic. You might choose a better daycare provider if you're really checked into the topic. So
Well, yeah. And you said 6 months. I know some baby drop their daycares off at 6 weeks. So I'm even back
yeah,
into
you
6 weeks. And you
So
can say, I read my baby this book. I think what you're going to do, what this does, even though if you're not a fan of my method, what this does, if you get pushback from the daycare lady and say, I want you to read this to the kids in your daycare. If you get pushback from the daycare lady and she says, I don't do that, we don't do that here, find another daycare.
yeah, that's a red flag.
If she says,
Right.
we don't talk about that here, or we don't have that problem at my daycare, find another daycare. So this is the reaction you're going to want. Even if you have a 6-week-old, you say, I've read this book to my child. He's going to be groomed and he's going to understand body safety 100%. If the daycare lady says, oh, I've never seen that book before, I want to read it to everyone, where can I buy a copy? That is the response that you want. You want a positive response. So this
Right.
is kind of a litmus test, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
To how the daycare person will respond to body safety. If they shut you down, I wouldn't even leave the baby that day. I'd call in sick to work, take the baby home, and start
Yeah.
Googling other daycares.
Yeah,
Because there
true.
are a lot of daycares who want this material and they share it with kids.
Yeah, and a lot of daycares actually, you know, at this point in time, they have prevention policies, they have prevention mission statements, and they have prevention practices in place so that they can monitor their employees and make sure your kids are safe. So yeah, if you're at the right daycare and you bring this topic up, nobody is gonna say, "Oh, we don't do that here." That would be alarming to me.
Well, I like what you said about prevention. It is like washing your hands. It's like giving your children a vaccine.
Yeah.
You take the kids in the car, you strap them in the car seat. I think you can learn a lot about people's take on this topic by just waving that book in front of them, because it's pretty in your face. This is wrong. And we're training kids. In my book, I'm training kids to tell a trusted adult.
Right.
So if you're at a daycare and they don't want their 2 and 3-year-olds telling a trusted adult, just leave.
Yeah.
Your work will understand that you need to take a day off to do this, and you can research and find another daycare.
Yes.
That could be more child friendly, I guess, in a better way. It's really a preventative measure. Most child abuse is prevention. And that's why I love what I do, because prevention is so much fun. And easy.
I think that what you just said is so helpful to parents, you know, like, and I've been sort of wondering, you know, I feel like these people who do molest children and are predators, they run in their own circles and they communicate with each other and they gather knowledge from each other, and they have these circles of communication and sharing disgusting things, and you know how they groomed a 2-year-old, etc. So for parents, we have to have these safety circles, and they have to be sort of touching every layer of everything we do in life. So, you know, babysitters, childcare, teachers, camps, baseball practice, you name it, whatever the situation is where your kid is ever going to be alone with somebody else and not with you, you've got to get those circles flowing so that everybody knows about what you're doing with prevention.
Yes. And I know our time is almost up. That's kind of, the prevention is fun and easy. 90% of kids that are harmed by someone they know. So as a parent, you introduced that person that assaulted your child, you introduced that person to their life. So be very careful as a parent who you introduce to your children.
Exactly.
So 90% of this is within families, within friend circles. The Walmart abduction is 1 out of 10.
Right.
But the media blows that up. The media doesn't really want to talk to me about prevention because it's not flashy. It doesn't sell. My information
Right.
does not sell, and it's
I
not
know
shocking.
that's so true. And the whole stranger danger kidnapping thing, that is scandalous and gets a lot of attention because it's somebody we don't know. But it is uncomfortable thinking about the fact that most of this stuff happens within the circles of the people we know. And it's still very taboo to talk about. But to make it stop, we have to talk. So that's why we're talking today. And that's why we're sharing these stories. Julie, where can everybody go to learn more about your book and get any kind of resources from you and your, all your details? Where can people go
Sure,
for that?
it's just my name, juliefederico.com.
Okay.
My book is titled Some Parts Are Not for Sharing.
Okay.
It's
Perfect.
in Spanish and English. So if you use either of those words, you can find me. My email is juliefederico@gmail. If you want me to write you a script for Granny, I can, or anyone
Okay.
else.
All right.
And
I want a script for Granny.
okay, maybe we'll do that next time. Thank
Okay.
you for your time. I hope you can join us on our future podcast. So thank you for coming today. And Kimberly, thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, Julie. Take care.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.